This demonstrates our ongoing commitment to work multilaterally to advance respect for human rights. And we continue to have grave concerns about China's crimes against humanity and genocide on Uyghurs in Xinjiang. But I don't have anything to predict for you on future sanctions. Obviously, this is an issue that was raised in this meeting last week and was an issue that was raised by the president in his conversation with President Xi just a few weeks ago.
What will the U.S. do, if anything, if China doesn't change its approach? Is this sort of a one-stop sanction, or down the road will this be revisited and are further sanctions possible? I mean, they've given no indication that they would change approach. In fact, they have more or less doubled down that they're doing nothing wrong with respect to these minority groups.
Well, clearly sanctions are meant to deter behavior, but I'm not going to rule in or rule out any actions when we're at not even day 60. What day are we at? 62? I'm not even sure. Of the administration, I can assure you that obviously this is, again, we will be evaluating what the appropriate next steps are in close coordination with our partners and allies around the world. And as Secretary of State noted in his comments after this meeting, we are certain that the Chinese are noting that we are working much more closely with our allies and partners than had happened over the last 4 years, that we are focused on taking steps to invest in and improve our economic competition here at home. Those are all steps we're certain they're taking note of.
Sorry, very briefly, on the Guatemala trip, the president's proposal for $4 billion in aid for the Northern Triangle has made allusions to conditions that might be placed on it, reforms, anti-corruption efforts, that sort of thing. Is this something that Ambassador Jacobson will raise at all? In other words, are you going to be seeking changes in exchange for any funding, aid funding that might go to the region during this trip? Will you specify any particular asks in that regard?
That's a great question. I will also note that there's also a part of the trip, a delegation as our new special envoy for the Northern Triangle, who I'm certain will be playing a prominent role in leading these efforts and negotiations moving forward. Obviously, addressing issues like corruption, violence in the region and in these countries is something that is often raised with the government because we need to work through this funding mechanism through the immigration proposal with our own Congress. I don't have anything to kind of detail for you in terms of what those conversations will look like, but I'm sure when they come back, we will do a robust readout of their conversations.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Why hasn't the administration sought a supplemental funding to send resources to the border to help the migrant children, the unaccompanied minors? Is that something that's in the offing?
Well, I know Secretary Mayorkas has spoken to this exact question, which is a great one, and what he has conveyed is that the funding is not the root issue here, that there are larger issues or issues that we have been focused on working through, including processing, identifying additional facilities that we think will help address the challenges we're seeing at the border.
Okay. On vaccine distribution, I know that there are these two bilateral deals with Mexico and Canada. Mm-hmm. I know that you aren't ready to talk about lots of vaccine sharing around the globe, but is the administration planning to emphasize bilateral agreements on vaccine sharing globally, or are you expecting to ultimately put doses into COVAX?
We, of course, remain committed to working through COVAX. We provided the most funding to COVAX of any country in the world with $4 billion. Mexico and Canada, as you all know, are our neighbors, and so there is a great deal of traffic that can go back and forth between these countries. So it made sense in those scenarios to do bilateral lending agreements, for lack of a better phrasing. But in terms of future, I expect it will be a combination, but certainly we will continue to be a contributing, supportive member of COVAX.
Just one follow-up on the Tsarnaev question and Boston bombing. Will the president, I guess we're trying to understand why the Department of Justice continued to move forward with this appeal if President Biden's position is that he has grave concerns about the death penalty. And has President Biden or will President Biden talk to the Attorney General about this case, possibly DOJ consider changing its appeal?
I don't have anything to preview for you on that front. The president also believes that the Department of Justice is an independent institution. And of course, there are times where it is appropriate to have conversations, but I don't have any conversations to preview for you with the Attorney General.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
As has previously been discussed, there are some families who are being released from facilities into the United States. they're not being given court dates or paperwork about how to complete the legal process. How is the administration going to ensure that they can follow that legal process that can be tracked down to make sure that they show up in court or apply for asylum?
Are you talking about the limited families who are already in removal proceedings, or who it's already been determined that they are going to be sent back to their countries, or which? There are very, very limited numbers of families, very limited, who are tested. They are, but I'm not sure which families you're talking about. So maybe tell me a little bit.
What numbers are we talking about here?
It's a great question. I would just point you to CBP and DHS for the specific numbers. They release that data and they have it more at hand.
I mean more so when there's a certain capacity at some of these facilities on the border that they're being released and not being given paperwork about when to, show up. And the migrants who have spoken to our reporters on the border are confused about how to push forward their asylum claims and how to, pursue staying somehow.
I'm not familiar with the exact case. I mean, I'm not sure if this is one case, 5 cases. I'd be happy to connect you with the officials there who can go deeper dive on it with you. Okay, go ahead.
So it's been a year since the U.S.-Mexico border and the U.S.-Canada border has been closed. Are there any plans in reissuing guidelines, especially with the vaccine distribution and partnerships we have with both Canada and Mexico?
I don't have anything to preview for you. It's constantly, of course, reevaluated. We look at it through the prism of COVID and safety and obviously diplomatic relationships too, but I don't have anything to predict for you on that front. Go ahead. Oh, go ahead. Alex,
Thank you.
go ahead.
Thank you.
Sorry. I was just sort of amorphously pointing.
Will Secretary Austin brief the president on his trip? And secondly, the Taliban has threatened the U.S. Unspecifically about some sort of action if the U.S. does not meet the May 1st deadline. So what is the president's plan for that?
The secretary sees the president on several times a week as a part of the PDB. Obviously, we don't preview what topics are discussed, but I'm certain he will discuss his trip with him, given he was in Afghanistan just over the weekend. In terms of the May 1st timeline, the president spoke to this during his interview last week with ABC, where he conveyed it would be tough, but there are ongoing policy discussions and decisions right now, and I don't have anything to preview for you on that front.
What is the president's message tonight for Senate Democrats? Is he going to get into his thoughts on the filibuster, for example?